diet sodas didn't have an effect on their own, but when they were combined with sugary beverages, then the effect was detrimental to the point where they had to stop the study. So let me go into it
Oh, I've
now
never
that I
heard
gave
that.
a yeah. I gave a slightly dramatic introduction to it, but so this is the Yale study. So there was a really interesting randomized controlled trial published in, I think it was Cell Metabolism. It was in 2020, and this was done in a lab at Yale. So a small lab. So it looked at the effects of sweeteners in three different forms. So one group drank a sucralose only beverage. So it was sweet but 0 calories. Another group drank a sugar sweetened beverage. And the third group had a combination sucralose plus maltodextrin, which for the average listener, it's pretty much sugar to clear it up. So now the theory they were testing was what we call the uncoupling hypothesis. So the idea that the body expects sweetness to signal calories. So they expected that when you eat an artificial sweetener beverage, your body says, well, I'm drinking something sweet right now, so, it probably also has calories. And they hypothesized that when the body does not receive these calories, it gets mixed up in a sense, right?
Yes, because the body gets hungry artificially, and
Yes.
glucose might be, no, sorry, insulin might be secreted, when that is not the case, I believe.
Yes, but that's not exactly what they found, surprisingly.
Oh,
So it wasn't the sucralose only drink that caused the problems, and it wasn't the sugar alone either. It was the combination. So when sucralose plus maltodextrin was consumed, this caused a sharp drop in insulin sensitivity in adults. And it was a very, very clear metabolic effect, like a very clear cause and effect relationship. And the body was responding less effectively to insulin after just 2 weeks when sucralose was combined with sugar, not alone.
oh, that's amazing. And if you can extend it to identify the patterns where you drink the diet soda and you have then a burger or a sugar treat or something, it's mind blowing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And, we have to think about this when we have these discussions because we may not have enough data, but we also cannot advise people to, just go ahead and drink 10 diet sodas per day because, like, the adolescents who drink this stuff, we don't know the metabolic effect it could have in them in 30 years, right?
Yes, I also want to tackle another question now. Do you believe that by using diet sodas you can actually lose weight? Because there are also many opinions on that. Some say that it tricks your brain and then you consume more food. Some say that it's the best tool to weight loss. What is your opinion on that?
Look, well, I don't think it's the best tool to weight loss because your body doesn't need it, right? So it's not necessary for your body. It's not a micronutrient that is used in metabolism. Like your body will not crave sucralose if you don't give it to it to do its cellular functions, right? So there have been some studies in which participants on diet sodas compared to normal sodas with sugar and compared to water, the artificial sweetener beverages had the same or even better weight loss effect than water. Now,
Hmm.
that's interesting, but also we have to put it into context because we have to, in these cases, we have to analyze the metabolic stage the participants were in. We have to analyze their other health habits, you know. So I think that if somebody is an obese individual and he's gonna drink sodas anyways, he should drink diet sodas instead of sugary sodas, both in terms of caloric effect and insulin effect and inflammation. However, if you have the option, and everybody has the option to not drink diet sodas and drink, carbonated water, I just don't see why you couldn't do that personally.
Yeah, so it's a tool, but not the cure, if we might put it in a sentence.
Well, it's a very good replacement to sugar. It doesn't mean that it couldn't have any negative health effects potentially, I think.
Great. And can we discuss about the psychological factor of sweeteners and what it does to dopamine and dopamine receptors and the whole pathway?
Yes, yes. So, okay. Do you remember the Yale study I just
Yes.
mentioned?
Yes.
Okay, well, I think I'm gonna build up on that. The researchers of that study also did, because it fits very well to your question, the researchers of that study also did brain imaging with fMRI after what I previously mentioned, and they found changes in neural activity in areas like the mesolimbic system, which is the same reward circuitry involved in processing dopamine, cravings, motivation, addiction, all this stuff, right? So these are deep brain systems tied not just to how we respond to sweetness, but to how our brains regulate everything from hunger to emotional reward. So now you've got this question, which is why would combining sucralose with a carbohydrate change both insulin sensitivity and brain function? So, and what's the mechanism linking these two effects? So, could the brain changes themselves be contributing to the peripheral metabolic dysfunction? In adolescence, especially, this is a critical point because the teenage brain is still wiring itself. So, it's still establishing long term metabolic and neural patterns. So, if you disrupt that process at the wrong time, you might cement dysregulation into the adulthood. So on one hand, yes, this trial gives us a direct demonstration of harm in humans because it was a human study, but it also opens up deeper questions that a randomized trial, I think, cannot fully answer. What are the long-term consequences? Is this a universal effect? Like these are big unknowns.
Great. So, whoa, that's amazing. I didn't believe
Very interesting. Yeah.
all that at the beginning when saying, "Oh, I'm gonna drink a Coke, Diet Coke." What's wrong with that? And I also want to state another
Yeah.
problem with all the diet sodas. Because of the belief that do no harm and they're good, we actually habituatize them. We make a habit of drinking diet sodas once every day, twice every day, maybe. And this habit becomes an addiction because sweetness is addictive. No matter if it
Yes.
doesn't have a special miracle substance, it's sweet. So we are
Yes.
wired to sweetness. And it becomes a pathway where we might get addicted and overdose ourselves. And about overdosing, do you believe there is a worry for aspartame and cancer?
Look, the studies we have on cancer and cardiovascular disease, for that matter, there is epidemiological research that links artificial sweeteners to cancer and these health conditions. So there is this Nutrinet Santé cohort study, which found that, for example, a higher intake of artificial sweeteners, particularly aspartame, was associated with increased overall cancer risk. And we have some studies also which show potential links to cardiovascular disease, but at the end of the day, these are observational studies. It shows a correlation, it does not show causation. So participants who consume more sweeteners as well might differ in other risk factors like diet quality, baseline weight, medication use, and these things cannot be controlled. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that they cause cancer or that they cause anything, but I also won't drink them every day
Yes.
just to be safe, if
And I
it makes
also
sense.
believe it is classified as a group 2B carcinogen, which in the
Yes,
same
yes.
category also coffee is in the same category. Aloe vera, pickled vegetables, things we
Yes.
consume without harm. On the other hand,
Exactly, exactly.
alcohol is like group 1 carcinogen. We don't speak about it so much many times.
Well, look, I mean, something I forgot before, just to add to the psychological effect. The Yale study, which I mentioned, I think is super important because it was done on humans. And, it showed this very weird thing where sugar alone didn't have such a huge effect. and artificial sweeteners didn't have such a huge effect. But when they were combined, the effect was detrimental. They had to stop the study because of the metabolic impact. However, there was also a very interesting paper which was done on mice, and I don't want people to go, straight to, well, are you a mouse? Well, it can give us some mechanistic information at least. So, there was a 2022 paper in PNAS, and it was titled Transgenerational Transmission of Aspartame-Induced Anxiety and Changes in Glutamate GABA Signaling and Gene Expression in the Amygdala. So they exposed mice to low-dose aspartame, and they found not only that they developed a lot of anxiety, but the anxiety was transferred from one generation to the next and to the next. So this is super important because, it shows that it could alter genes by epigenetic changes, right? If this anxiety is transferred from in 2 generations, not even one. So again, mice are of course much more susceptible to metabolic impacts from any substance. But I mean, to me, it shows that the studies are behind on catching up with what actually these sweeteners do to the body. They will not kill you. You can drink a diet soda once in a while. It won't be toxic for you. But when somebody drinks 5 or 6 of them per day, well, then you have a conversation to do, I think.
So, before we wrap it up, a last question. You said about children. What about pregnant women? Should they be worried?
Well, look. In this question, I want to take a step back, actually. I don't want to answer specifically about artificial sweeteners.
Okay.
I think the best thing anybody can do is to eat real food. And it will be very hard for anybody to convince me otherwise. For everybody, especially pregnant women, because they have a baby that also requires nutrients, well, I think that the greatest thing to do is to abstain as much as possible from anything that is not real food. So
Anything that is
abstain
made in the
from
lab.
abstain from ultra processed foods. And like creatine is an ultra processed food and it's extremely beneficial. So that's not what I mean, obviously.
Yes.
I mean foods that are calorically dense, nutrient empty, and with a lot of ingredients that we're not sure if they are toxic and to what extent and in which doses.
Great. I think it's an amazing answer, and it gives us an overall view of how we should view nutrients and how we should intake our food and what choices
Yes.
should we make. All right, that's it for today's episode of Science Based.
Could I add something very quickly?
Of course,
you
if
allow
you
me.
have.
So I want to close with some practical context. I want to close with a takeaway, which is my takeaway. So based on the literature I have reviewed, this is my takeaway on the complexity of sweeteners. So one of the reasons sweeteners are such a fascinating topic is because they provoke instant reactions, often based on overly simple rules of thumb. So people tend to assume that if something has no calories, it must be harmless. If it's artificial, it must be dangerous. If it's natural, it must be good. But the reality is far more complex than that. So we have to understand these are incredibly diverse chemical compounds. Context matters. And at the end of the day, I would say that drinking artificial sweetened beverages is far better. But why take the risk when you cannot drink them? That's what I want to close with.
That's an amazing takeaway. I think the listeners will be so thankful for that. Huge thanks,
Hopefully.
Romanos, for joining us. Whether you're a
Thank
Diet
you
Coke
for having me.
devotee or a stevia skeptic, hopefully you're leaving with more clarified answers than confusion. Don't forget to check out the episode, links for all the studies we discussed, because science isn't just what sounds good, it's what stands up to scrutiny. If you liked the episode, drop us a review, share it with a friend, and follow Romanos. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay science-based.